I started working.
Okay. Sorry about that. Looks like we had a little bit of a crash there, but I hope we're back. Let's see. Anyways, working on this insect foot, and as I was saying, I had Sculptris mode turned on, and sometimes I'll just turn that on for a little while. But if you have masking settings, like an auto mask turns on, sometimes Sculptris mode won't work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the katydid model that I did a while back. Take a look at those feet because I think those work a little bit better.
So, my name is Keller, and today we are going to be discussing insects, bugs, picking up where I left off in my last live stream.
Let's see, turn on solo mode. There we go. So some nice feet that I did a while back over here. So what I'm going to do is, let's go in here and texture map. And turn on solo.
So the last time I worked on this was...
I'm going to press Shift S, so that's kind of my reference for my other model, my more realistic model. I'm going to use that as I kind of define this, because the images I have are kind of difficult to follow because they're so blurry. Insect feet are kind of weird because they can be very different depending on the bug you're looking at.
And so you can check out live stream for that. I had another live stream scheduled, but then my computer kind of died on me.
I just want to get kind of the shape going here.
So my computer is down for so now I'm back, and I'm excited to be here and excited to do some
While keeping it kind of just a few pieces like this.
and to continue with this project, which is of course this katydid that I'm doing, kind of a cartoony style, sort of like Pixar inspired. Pixar inspired.
Sorry about that. I spend all night working on the foot, you can kind of get sucked into it, so I'm going to do this, and then let's turn that auto groups back up, mask by auto groups, so we can add this kind of bulge right here. Let's see, I'm going to pull this out. Again, kind of making it just very exaggerated. I think I had the sort of the basic shape worked out. I'm going to pull this up a little bit over here. Okay, and then what I think I'm going to do, let's turn on the solo button here real quick. I'm going to do a ZRemesh here just so I can kind of work in with subdivisions, which helps me make it a little bit smoother, a little bit neater. If I decide I want to go back into Dynamesh, I can always do that later. So that's really not a big deal. Sometimes I'll go back and forth between Dynamesh and ZRemesh. So we're going to ZRemesh, and I'm going to do this as adaptive half. I do this a couple times. And do a little smoothing. I'm going to make this kind of more skinnier. Since this is stylized, I kind of want to exaggerate it a little bit. So make the skinny parts extra skinny and the thick parts extra thick. I'm going to control click here on the undo timeline just to store that history state, and do another couple of ZRemeshes just to get a nice low poly. So I'm getting an error right here, a remeshing error. If you can see at the top of the screen, you might not be able to see it because of the title bar actually. Hold on a second, go into here and just for a moment turn off the title bar. So you can see right, if I do a ZRemesh, I get an error, remeshing error encountered. This is very easy to fix. Just means that there's some geometry in there that ZRemesh can't figure out. So if you go into the tool palette down under geometry, mesh integrity, you can do check mesh if you want to. It says that, okay, there's two faces with multiple references. Or you just click fix mesh and that'll fix it. And then do ZRemesh, and now it works. So sometimes you have to do that a few times. It's down 28,000. I'm going to do one more to just get it nice and low, because the lower I get this in terms of the poly count, the easier it is to smooth out some of these bumps and make it look a little bit more, you know, well, cleaner and neater. I stored the history state so I could project the details back on here, but I didn't really sculpt any details that I'm overly in love with at the moment. So I think I forgot to turn on polygroup. Yeah, I forgot to turn on keep groups when I did ZRemesh. That's no problem. I'll just go down here to polygroups, do an auto groups. My groups are not symmetrical, so what I can do is go in here and then do merge similar groups. And now you can see that the pieces of geometry, the pieces of the model that have the similar poly count are now in the same polygroup. So just a couple ways to kind of ensure that the polygroups are symmetrical. And I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. Nudge it with a move brush. That. See if we did it one more time. Go down here to geometry. This time I'll turn on keep groups. And let's see, ZRemesh, keep groups, whoops, not freeze groups, keep groups, ZRemesh, done 13,000. I'm going to turn off adaptive. It's kind of the limbo. How low can you go? But the lower I go, like I say, it makes it very easy to smooth this out. And now what I'm going to do is subdivide it. So this way I have a model that has 5 levels of subdivision for the legs. Let's turn on polygroups. So it's at the highest level, it's about 1.7 million. I could subdivide it even more, but what I think I'll do is I still have this history state stored, so I'm going to click on this, mask it. So basically, Control Shift, Control Alt to mask, Control Shift on the blank part of the canvas, excuse me, bring back the rest of the model. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I'm going to project history, but I don't want to affect this part of the model, just really the feet. So let me do this, Control A, and then I'll go down here and do project history, And that way I bring my details back on my feet without affecting the rest of the model, because that's the only one I really care about. And do a little bit of fixing here because I get some projection errors. That's okay. And control and drag to clear the mask, and then go down here. Oops. I do Shift D to go down in subdivision level, so I can just kind of smooth this out a little bit. It's not great topology, but that's okay. It's really, you know, this is not topology that I would animate with or final topology. I just want to have take advantage of having those lower levels of subdivision so that I can make it easier to smooth things out than if you have like a Dynamesh. Because Dynamesh, I love it, but it can get kind of lumpy when you're sketching with it, and sometimes those lumps can get frustrating to remove. So do a ZRemesh, get some lower levels of subdivision, just so I can do this kind of work right here. And eventually, you know, if this is a model I was going to rig and animate, I would go in and spend more time doing a better topology. You can get away with a lot more of the bugs because they don't deform the same way that like a human face does. So sometimes you can get away with ZRemesh topology depending on what your deadline is, what you're trying to do. But it can also do a manual retopology using the ZModeler I'm not going to do that tonight, though. I might do that at a later point. Another thing I like to do, just to clean things up, let's go to like a middle level, like subdivision level 3, and I'll go down here to clay polish. Just click on that. It just does an overall polish, kind of neatens things up. Remember, it does leave a mask behind, so I'm going to control, drag, and release to get rid of that mask. And then maybe now we can kind of just play with some fun details. I use like SK cloth brush, but you could also use like Damien standard brush, and just play with this kind of thing right here, just for fun. What would you say trips you up the most when you're modeling something like this? I think that's a lot of different ways to answer that question. I think, you know, from a technical standpoint, I like to get things nice and clean and neat. So you can see I'm spending a lot of time I just spent a lot of time with sort of ZRemesh, creating these lower levels of subdivision just so I can get things nice and smooth. Still feels like it could be a bit smoother. I don't want to make it too smooth because then it doesn't look organic. It looks robotic, you know, and look like it's sculpted, right? In the technical aspect of working with insects, you know, there's some things that are easier than others, and the harder things are anything to do with the muscles because, as I mentioned before, it's hard to see insect muscles. It's also hard to understand them because they're on the inside of the exoskeleton and they're very complicated. So like these joints right here, you get a lot of kind of gobbledygook, which is hard to kind of figure it out. And sometimes you actually either have to get like a scientific paper or some diagrams or even contact an entomologist, depending on what you're trying to do. I'm doing like a cartoon character right here, so this is going to be not as precise, but sometimes I have done models where they have to be precise. A good example would be like a dragonfly. Like the dragonfly wing muscles are really something else. And it's hard even from photographs to see what's going on, even good macro photographs. So you have to use a lot of different sources to kind of figure out what's going on there. And that's something I'm still learning. It's probably going to take a long time to really understand. There's other stuff like the feet right here. I was kind of fiddling with them for a while, and I wanted to move on because I didn't want to spend all night on the feet. But there's so many different pieces, and some insect feet are always kind of different. Quick question on masking. Regarding masking, what if we use a lasso or any masking tool and it appears to be on the back side of the mesh? How do we prevent that? Well, you can actually turn on backside masking for the mask brush, right? So let's see if we can do, let me save this real quick. Because I haven't saved yet. That's always a disaster in the making. And let's get an example of a polysphere, because I think that's a really good question. I don't know if it'll work with the mask lasso, but there's only one way to find out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly edit this so that we have a thin part of the model. Maybe these are like ears or something like that, right? So the situation is, I'm going to dynamesh it real quick. Okay, so if I hold control for the masking brush and paint a mask, I know you're asking about mask lasso, but this is painting a mask. What I want to do is I want to see if I can get it thin enough so that the mask actually comes through the other side. Because the other thing is polygroups are always a good way to deal with that kind of issue. Okay, so we can see the mask is bleeding through on the other side because it's very thin, right? So if I hold the control key and go into brush and turn on back face mask for the masking brush, right? And now I paint, there's no mask on the other side. So let's see if I do, let's do an experiment. Mask lasso, right? Draw a mask there, it goes all the way through. Holding the control key, going into the brush palette, turn on back face mask. Nah, it doesn't work for that. That's too bad. So the other thing you could do is, let's try this. I'm going to hold the control key, whoops, go back to our mask pen, paint a mask here. Let's say on this side. Only one side. And I'm going to do Control W, so that creates a polygroup right here. This purple part is a polygroup, right? And now if I go in here and do mask by polygroups all the way up to 100, again, this may not work, but it's worth a shot. If I do the masking lasso, no, it goes all the way through. So I don't know, the mask lasso might just be set up so that you can't really guard against back face mask. But you know, the other worst case scenario is you could draw a mask like this and then go in here with mask pen and alt. You know, that's kind of lame. That sort of works. That's the hard way to do it. The other thing, of course, is then there's visibility, right? If I have a polygroup here, I can hold Control and Shift, click on this polygroup, then do a mask lasso, right? Control Shift to bring back the rest of the model, and then there's no mask back there. So you could set up your polygroups on that one part you're trying to mask, and then use the polygroup to hide everything else but that one part of the model, and then draw your mask on, and then bring back the rest of the model, and that would work too. That's one idea. There's probably some other tricks that I'm missing. There's always a way around these things in ZBrush. It just sometimes takes a bit of noodling around. Let's go back in here. So yeah, I think the like I said, parts like the feet. Oh yeah, what I wanted to do really quick was just take a quick look at the bee feet. Good example of insect feet. Now when you have a scan data, the great thing about scan data is now it's very easy to see what's going on with the feet anatomy here in this bug. So I don't have a scan of a Katie did, but if I did, that would make things easier. High quality scans allow you to see things that are very hard to see otherwise, like the bottom of the head here where the mouth parts come in, or the back of the thorax where the abdomen attaches with the thorax, and this kind of stuff. Now, most of the scanned stuff that you'll find online is not quite this high quality. I got this from a scientist, a client I'm working with, so that has the advantage. But you can go to places like Sketchfab and actually find a whole bunch of scan data online for free. And now there are more and more labs that are starting to get high quality scans of insects, and they're posting them online. So you can find scan data that way. So that's kind of cool. It's the technology is getting better and better. Of course, our good old friend and nemesis AI is making things like working with scans a lot easier, and it's going to start automating a lot of the cleanup process. But the good news is that there are millions and millions and millions of species of insects, so we'll still have plenty of things to work on for those of us who love to work on bugs. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Damien. Oh, you know what? Another brush that I really like, it's one of my favorites these days, is called Orb Cracks. And this one I got from Tomas Wittelsbach, who also does a live stream. But this one's really great for drawing these just like lines like that. So what I like to do is maybe bring down the Z intensity and the draw size, and maybe just play with this kind of thing right here, just to get this kind of cool detail. This is really more of a color thing than a sculpting thing, but since this is stylized, I'm going to make it draw it on here. And I might not keep this detail, but right now I'm just kind of sketching it in as an experiment to see how I like it. There's another thing you could do, which is a kind of a cool technique. It may work in this case, it might not, we'll see. Or if I draw, let's say I draw a line like this, let's say like a dash like that, and then another one like down here. Don't move the model or anything like that. I'll go into stroke and do interpolate. And you can see it actually puts in the strokes in between this one and this one evenly spaced. In that case, it worked really well. So let's see, let's try that again. I'm going to go one right here, and one right here, and then go into stroke. You can set the number of interpolations using this slider right here. I'm going to keep it at 10. Yeah, it works pretty well. Might have to neaten it up a little bit here, but it's kind of cool. Let's do like bring up the Z intensity a little bit. One more time, like this. Stroke, let's set the stroke count to 8. I'm just gonna guess here. Interpolate, that's too much. So let's do 6. Let's set it to 5. And then go in here. Kind of helps because at the very least it gives you an idea what the spacing is, even if you have to come back here and kind of touch it up a little bit. It's a neat technique. Let's see. Let's turn on the old lazy mouse. Go into stroke, interpolate. This is the hard part when you're trying to duplicate something kind of precisely. Might be easier in this case just to draw it in manually. Oh, it's not too bad. We'll call it good enough for now. For this part, I'll just draw it in manually. Maybe bring down the Z intensity and do that. It's kind of cute. You know, I can go in here and just play with some other details, maybe going back to my SK cloth brush. And I'm inventing stuff here because this is my character and I can do what I want. It's nice to do this because a lot of times I spend an awful lot of time trying to do something that is as accurate as I possibly can get it. And that's a lot of fun too, but it can be exhausting. So sometimes it's nice to take a break from that and just invent something. Let's see what all this insect modeling over the past few years is, what kind of ideas it's given me. You know, some parts of sort of insect shape language are kind of ingrained the same way as if you do characters a lot. You kind of get a intuition about human anatomy that's kind of built into the way that you sculpt. And so this could be kind of the same thing. I'm going to take my clay tubes brush here and just kind of dig in a little bit. What I might do is I'm going to use the H polish brush. Let's go back there a little bit. Just kind of clean it up a little. Let's do save. Take a little bit of a break, rest my eyes. I have some music playing in the background. I hope it's not too loud. Just, you know, it's actually my own music, so I don't have any rights issues with it because it's my music. What song is currently, is it playing right now? I can't tell. Let's see. Okay. Let me know if it's too loud. Okay. Then we can do the hairs in the leg here. I feel like what I want to do though is save. And let's go down to a lower subdivision level. Just do a little bit of a touch up here. Get some of the wobbles out. A little bit of an inflate here, so I have a nice flare at the top. Maybe at the bottom. and then skinny in the middle, just kind of for fun. This is obviously a little bit more straight, but that's kind of boring. So you can give them kind of 70s flare jeans, bell bottoms here. That's pretty cool. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some hairs here using Fibermesh just for fun. There's a couple ways we could do this. One way we could do it with Fibermesh, or we could just simply go in here with, say, like the move brush or something. This would probably be better in Dynamesh mode, but you can set the move to like maybe drag rect, and then let's see, intensity. Is that what I want to do? No, sorry, don't want to do that. What I meant to say is, sorry, hold the Alt key and pull like this. Let's bring the draw size down like this, and then you can kind of shape it like that. So when you're using the move brush, if you hold the Alt key, it's going to pull out based on the normal direction. So I could go in here and I could even do this. Let's try this just for fun. Hold the Alt key and pull like that. Hold the Alt key and pull like this. And then do stroke and interpolate. And then you get this. So that's kind of neat. That's one way to do it. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you made it, Lisa, and I also am glad you tuned in now, because I was having all kinds of technical difficulties before. So now I've got things sorted out, so it's a little bit more enjoyable to watch, but it was a bit of a disaster there for a little while. I'm going to undo that one more time. Let's try this again. I'm going to make the draw size smaller and hold the Alt key, pull it out. Hold the Alt key, pull it out. And then do stroke, interpolate. That looks kind of cool. And then I can use the move brush to go in here and pull these out like this. So I'm just kind of shaping it. The spikes really add a lot of fun to the design. This is when it starts to come alive. You know, the problem is with these things is, and why it's like, you got to do a lot of them before you start to understand when it's going to start looking good, because a lot of these things can look, these bug models can look really terrible for a long time and get kind of discouraging. So you kind of got to push your way through it, and after you've done it enough times, you start to know that when things don't look quite right, that you can fix it. There's no reason to panic or abandon the model. You just got to keep pushing through it, and you start to realize that there's some things that, you know, it's like if you're drawing, you know, if you're doing a drawing and you're drawing somebody's eyes and the eyes look terrible or dead until you suddenly throw in a highlight, and all of a sudden the highlight comes out. It just adds all this life to the drawing and makes the eyes look nice and juicy, and not suddenly you're like, oh, it just required a little bit of a highlight and suddenly now it looks nice. And it's the same thing with like bug models. You just learn over time that there's some things that once you add them, it helps make the design come to life. Things like these little spiky hairs are a good example. They can really start to make it look more fun. Less like this. This is where it can get discouraging when you just have a stick like that, or like right now where my abdomen is just kind of a mess. You know, I'm going to clean that up, obviously. But it takes a bit of work to get there. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm the same way with drawing. I actually go sometimes for years without drawing enough. I'm starting to get back into drawing right now. It's helpful. And yeah, ZBrush on the iPad is wonderful. ZBrush on the iPad is wonderful for another reason, which is, as I mentioned earlier, I had my computer died on me a few weeks ago, and I still had clients and they still had models that they wanted. Luckily, since I had my models on Dropbox and I had ZBrush on the iPad, I could just go and work on the iPad and while my computer was being rebuilt, and I didn't lose that much time. So that was a real lifesaver there. Also, I just enjoy working with ZBrush on the iPad because you can sit back on the couch and it's relaxing, or doing it on TV or something like that. So I undid that because I want to try another experiment. This time I'm going to do, let's see what happens if I do Fibermesh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the control key, get my mask pen here, and I'm going to draw dots where I want my Fibermesh to be. The nice thing about Fibermesh is it's going to be a separate piece of geometry, a separate subtool, so it's not going to affect the geometry of this right now, as opposed to pulling things out. The disadvantage of Fibermesh is you gotta really futz with it for a while to get it to work the way you want it to. So we'll see, just for fun, if this works or not. So just painted a bunch of dots, masks right here. I'll just add a couple down here for fun. It's insisting on autosave. Okay, let's do a few more right here. Excuse me. What's your favorite subject for drawing? Insects, creatures, figures, and wildlife. I like to draw. What I do is, since most of the time if I'm at home or I'm working, I'm doing CG stuff. The only time I get to draw is at times when I'm out, or I used to do this when I had to ride the bus a lot. So I get like a cheap little notebook from an art store, and I go out and I just buy like, really cheap art books, like a book of like a $5 book of Caravaggio paintings or something like that, or photography, or I really like to be inspired by things like graffiti, or maybe it's a old comic book, manga, or whatever. And I'll literally just cut it up and I'll glue the cut up images on one page of the sketchbook, and then I have a blank page on the other side. And so if I'm out somewhere and I'm just, sitting in a waiting room or something like that, and I need to occupy myself, and pull out the sketchbook and just practice maybe copying, whether it's an old master or maybe it's wildlife or something like that. Obviously, it's not the same as doing a life drawing or something like that. But, if you're stuck on a bus or in a waiting room, it's not bad to be able to practice drawing a little bit. So I'll do that. I like to, when I can, do life drawing classes. It's been a long time since I've done that. I do like doing wildlife or bugs for a microscope, or sometimes, like I say, I'll copy like a comic. I like to stretch different styles, maybe styles I'm not familiar with. I'm not like a huge anime fan, but I like to try and practice that style just to understand it. Or graffiti is another one that I like to study because I think it's such an interesting style and so many different shapes, and it's totally alien to anything I normally do. So those are the kinds of things that I like to draw when I get a chance to draw. Okay, so I've painted a mask here on my legs, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Fibermesh and turn on preview, and of course we get this goofy looking thing right here. And I'm going to switch the material to a light material. Any tips for new ZBrush users? Yeah, watch all my videos and all my books and practice all the time. Read my books and that kind of stuff. Just do ZBrush. Okay, well here's a good tip. All right, not being sarcastic. When you're first starting out, don't be afraid to sit down and make a mess. In other words, rather than sitting down saying, today I'm going to sculpt the katydid, or I'm going to sculpt the character, or I'm going to sculpt a face. Try this. Set your timer on your phone for 30 minutes and spend 30 minutes just making a mess in ZBrush, just so you understand what all these crazy things do and what they can do. Because if you're set on like, I'm going to sculpt this thing, X, whatever it is, you're immediately narrowing yourself so that you're only using those tools in ZBrush that are going to allow you to sculpt that thing. And that could be frustrating when you're learning, when you're new to ZBrush, because you don't know what those tools are or where they are. And ZBrush, as you can tell, the interface is crazy. So what you really want to do is make a mess. Just grab a sphere, a Dynamesh sphere or whatever, and just pull and press and play with the brushes, see what Nanomesh does, see what Fibermesh does, all these different things. The more you play with it, the more you're going to get an idea, and then you come up with those happy accidents, which can turn into a technique. So that's the first thing I would do. And then when you've done that for like maybe a couple weeks or whatever, and you kind of feel like you've done enough of it, what you can do then is set yourself a timer for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever, and for every day, do a skull. Sculpt a skull from reference. New skull. Every day it's a new skull. You start with a sphere, sculpt for as long as you can within that 15 to 30 minutes. When the timer goes off, you're done. Throw it away. Don't ever look at the skull again, and just do it, and then do what you're going to do for the rest of the day. Next day, do the same thing. Start up, do that skull for 30 minutes. Or it could be something like, if you don't want to do a skull, do an ear or do a whole head. And just do that every day until you get, that's a great way to kind of build up your skills and your confidence in ZBrush, especially if you're being a character modeler, because then you're also, you're building up your anatomy chops at the same time you're building up your ZBrush chops. And so those are kind of like opposite approaches. One is make a mess, the other is sculpt something very specific. And if you set that timer for 30 minutes, then it sucks at the end of the 30 minutes, it doesn't matter, because the point is building up that muscle memory. It's just the same thing as like playing scales on a piano or on the guitar or whatever, or a violin or whatever instrument you want to play. You're building up that muscle memory every day by doing it. The way that we learn, I'm sorry I'm pontificating here, but you did ask the question. The way that we often learn is it's by reinforcing neural connections in our head. That's why learning requires repetition. Whether you're learning a language, learning math, learning a musical instrument or art, whatever, it's the building of those connections in your brain, those neural links, and that requires doing it every day for an extended period of time. So in other words, as anybody who's done figure drawing knows, it's not like if you sat down once a month for a 12-hour figure drawing session, you get anything good out of that. But if you spent the exact same amount of time and spread it out over, say, a month or a week or something like that, then you're getting a lot more out of it, because you're sort of rebuilding those connections. You're doing it every day as opposed to trying to cram it all into one time. So it's like the 10,000 hours, whatever idea that people have. Those 10,000 hours have to be spread out over a long period of time. You can't do them in a single month or something like that and expect to have good results. Sorry, I've been talking so much I lost my Fibermesh. ZBrush, it looks like an airline cockpit, or airplane cockpit sometimes. There's so many buttons. I've had the advantage, since I've been using it for so long, that I've seen them add things gradually. So, for me, it's learning more. I'm just building on stuff I already know about ZBrush. Whereas if you're brand new, then this thing can be kind of scary because there's so much going on here. Okay, so let's take a look at Fibermesh here. Speaking of scary things, and we've got these like weird brushes coming out of here. And then we've got this going on. So I'm going to turn off the preview. I just got a little extra mask. So the whole point of me painting those masks, by the way, was the Fibermesh is only going to appear on the masked spots, these right here. So what I'm trying to do is I want to design a Fibermesh that looks like these little spikies here. And a couple of things. After I paint the mask, I'm going to go in here and under masking, maybe shrink the mask a little bit. just so it's smaller, and then I'll do sharpen mask. So I'm getting smaller, more concise dots there. And then I can go back into Fibermesh. Fibermesh, where'd you go? Fibermesh, there you are. Preview. And now what I'm going to do is start twiddling with these sliders until I get what I want. So I'm going to lower the max fibers. And that's pretty low. At 0.017, let's try 0.02. I'm going to increase the coverage so they're a bit thicker. And let's do point. So this is a preview, so this is not what the final thing is going to look like. This is okay, but I think there might be better ways to do it. But let's just play with it nonetheless, just to see how far we can get. And then I'm going to go down here to, let's set twist to 0. The length, I'm going to set the length variation to 0, so they're all about the same length. Let's make the, let's set gravity to 0, so they're not drooping like that. Let's go down here to, let's see. Scale tip. I'm going to bring down scale tip a bit. Width profile. Let's see. I can look a little bit pointier. Where I have these double up here, there's so few of them that I could probably just, delete them. Let's go over here to my mask. Let's set that to 0. And the mask should be influencing it. Let's do area. So this is just a matter of playing with these sliders. It's a little too random though. I mean, I could sit here and mess with it until it's less random, but at the moment right now, I'm not super excited about how this looks. It's worth a try. We can try increasing the profile. We'll get the warning here, but there's so few fibers that's going to add a little bit of thickness here. See how it now has thickness to it? Since there's so few fibers here, I'm not really worried about the polygon count. Let's see. I don't know. I don't know if I like it. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. Have I worked with other software? Oh, yeah. I've been a professional Maya user since 1998. So, yeah. And I've worked with Blender, and I've done a lot of training in Maya and taught Maya at Gnomon for many years, and I also teach Maya through the Gnomon workshop. I started out long before ZBrush. I was a professional CG artist before ZBrush even existed. So ZBrush was an answer to a lot of our prayers back in the day. We were always waiting for, there was a lot of software. Sorry, now this is getting into lore here. A lot of software promised digital sculpting for many, many years. And, like Maya would introduce its artisan brushes, which allowed you to kind of sculpt NURB surfaces. It was kind of pathetic. We had subdivision surfaces and some 3D programs that were kind of trying to do a brush-like interface. That was basically all it was doing was the brush was moving vertices in or out, right? and that's how it worked. ZBrush came along and completely changed the game on everything because it's using some kind of crazy voodoo under the hood that does more than just push vertices in and out. Because it was also the first software where you could subdivide up to millions of polygons and the software would still behave. So it was a huge game changer, literally, because it changed gaming industry as well as VFX. So I adopted ZBrush in like 2004. I played with it a little bit before then, but 2004 is when I became a real hardcore ZBrush user. But yeah, I've had to use all kinds of different 3D software since then. My main tools are ZBrush and Maya, although I'm getting into Blender more and more, and Unreal. So those are the ones that I like the most, and then rendering software as well. Yeah, I don't like I don't like this, so I'm skipping the Fibermesh. But it's, it could work if I really forced it to. I'm going to go back to what I was doing before with the Move brush. I thought that worked pretty well. You could also use Nanomesh or something like that, but I think what I'm going to do is, the other thing we could do is this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use Sculptris to pull out my hairs here, but the problem is that, I don't want to have to ZRemesh all this stuff that I've already done. I want to keep this. So I'm going to duplicate my model here of the legs, and using polygroups, I'm going to, let's go down to lowest subdivision level. So I'm going to Control-Shift-Click on these things that I don't need, this, and this, and I'm going to go Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. So now I'm just left with this guy, and maybe I'll move it up to like 18,000. So subdivision level 3, 18,000. I'm going to delete lower, delete higher. Excuse me, because I don't want levels of subdivision. I'm going to set my mask, my polygroup down to 0. So this is something I was encountering earlier. Sometimes I'm like, okay, well, I want to use Sculptris mode here. So I'll switch over to, say, Snake Hook. But it won't let me turn on Sculptris. So why won't it let me turn on Sculptris? It's because I have this auto masking set up to 100. Set this down to 0. Suddenly I can turn on Sculptris. That's one of those little gotchas. Oh yeah, I remember the Bingo the Clown from the early days of Maya. Yeah, that's when I started learning Maya as well. That was a really weird time. But what I really remember is, and why I got involved with Gnomon, was back then the Maya documentation was not that great. It was like all these gray books. It was like a whole shelf full of books. And it was a real pain to try and learn Maya. And then Alex Alvarez started publishing videos online, and I always liked the way that he taught Maya. So I became a huge fan of the Gnomon workshop. I ended up eventually moving out to California and going to taking classes at Gnomon, and then eventually actually literally recording those Maya videos. The same Maya series that I learned from, that Alex was recording, is the one that I sort of took over. They asked me to take over for recording because I think it got a little bit boring for Alex to do those after a while, but I like doing them. And then I taught Maya classes at the Gnomon School for a long time. That was fun too. And I've written a few books on Maya. Kind of curious, real quick, just to see. So I've got Sculptris mode. I'm using the Snake Hook brush. I'm going to pull out one like this. Actually, I'm going to do this. For this to work, I can't move the camera. I'm going to go blank. That. And that. I don't know if interpolate works with Sculptris mode. Let's try one more time. sort of kind of works. No, I just do eyeball it. Maya's a cool program, but I don't enjoy it as much as, say, I enjoy ZBrush. Like, if I have to spend a day in ZBrush, I'm a very happy person. Maya is okay, but it can be a bit exhausting. It's a bit more technical. It's hard to improvise in Maya. It's hard for me to improvise in Maya. And it's kind of funny because, you know, when I started, before we had digital sculpting, it's like you really had to worry about your modeling, your topology, all the technical aspects at the same time you're worrying about the artistic aspects. Or a lot of times you'd have to, you know, that's why we had people, you know, sketching things out, making clay maquettes, because then you could worry about the artistic stuff and then figure out the technical stuff after you had the design, even like a clay maquette or something like that. What ZBrush allowed you to do is, since I can sculpt something and then easily retopologize it later, and I have all these tools, I can worry about the artistic stuff first and leave the technical stuff to later. And that's very freeing. So these are kind of fat, which is okay, but I can thin them out. Something like that. And I'll go in here and use the mood brush. Smooth it to kind of reduce the size here. Yeah, Arnold is very nice. And the modeling tools are nice. The animation tools in Maya are really good. That's actually the best part of Maya. This graph editor rigging tools are very good. I mean, it took years for them to get good. When I started using Maya, it was all NURBS. You didn't even have polygons until it was like version 2.5 or so. So I was modeling everything with NURBS, and that is a real challenge. Try modeling a human ear using NURBS sometimes. It'll drive you nuts. But the UV tools have gotten good in Maya. They sucked for a long time, but now they're good. They have sculpting tools in Maya. I don't know. They're okay, but they kind of just took Mudbox and stuck it in Maya, and then they made it smaller and less effective. And then I guess, I don't even know if Mudbox is around anymore. Do you still have Mudbox users out there? It's hard to sound cool when you say, I'm a Mudbox user. Sounds like you've got some kind of substance abuse problem. I do render in Keyshot sometimes. My favorite renderer is Redshift. So if you go back, you can see I did a few of these ZBrush live sessions where I modeled a sort of a made-up bug, but I also did a Japanese hornet, and I rendered them using Redshift for ZBrush. But I like Arnold a lot. Redshift is nice because it's fast and it works really quickly. I think people agree that Arnold has better skin shaders if you're doing characters. And the nice thing is Arnold comes with built into Maya, unless you need to render a sequence, and then you need to get a license. But Redshift is very, very nice. It works in my I used Octane for a while. I actually worked for Otoy, the makers of Octane, for a while. So I was a big Octane fan. These days I tend to prefer Redshift if you're going to go for a GPU-based renderer. I worked on a planetarium show for the Griffith Observatory. And we did all of that in Arnold, and that was a lot of fun. It worked well. Arnold actually has a fisheye lens shader, which you can use for rendering domes for planetariums. Denoiser is very nice in Arnold. Redshift denoiser is nice too, but Arnold is really good. Very easy to use and works great. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll show some of the stuff I've been doing with Arnold lately. I know this is a deviation from... Well, it's not really, because I made these models in ZBrush. I'm still really talking about ZBrush. This is my website with my portfolio. So I've got a bunch of different stuff in here. So this is rendered with Redshift in ZBrush right here. I don't have hairs on it, but that's my Japanese hornet. So these are all rendered directly in ZBrush without I go into Maya or anything like that. So that's kind of cool. So these are some stuff that I've been working on with my lovely partner, Irene. She's been doing the texturing in Substance, but a lot of these models were actually made in ZBrush and rendered in Arnold for Maya. So a little French cafe that we're building here. So it looks pretty nice. This is the actual reference photography, and I wanted to post this because you notice that the pattern isn't perfect here. We have some parts that aren't repeating. We did that intentionally because the actual floor and the actual cafe had the same issue. So so that's our reference. So it was a lot of fun gathering reference on that. But this is all modeled in ZBrush. So these the bar and the stools and the table, the cappuccino, these fluffy chairs. So this is the bar that we're working on. And then, you know, exported into Maya, and then textures were done at Substance Painter by Irene. And she did a fantastic job. Look at this. I just love this kind of stuff right here. But these are all rendered in Arnold for Maya. So, and then, yeah, okay, so, and then these are my 3D prints of some of my bug models. Anyways, so if I ever finish this leg someday, this model will look just as good, right? Hopefully. I got really kind of into making the leg here and didn't get very far in the other parts of the model today. That's okay. I'm going to be doing this at the same time next week. So maybe I'll work on the abdomen here. So let's say what I'm going to do here is, since this is taking a bit too long, I'm going to go ahead and let's do a Dynamesh. I'm going to turn off Sculptris mode. I'm going to Control-Shift-Click right here to store a history point. And I'm going to do a ZRemesh again. And the reason I want to do a ZRemesh is because I can get that lower levels of subdivision, which will make smoothing these things out, making them a bit more pointy, a little bit easier. You can see it's kind of happening automatically already. So I'm getting that error again, so I'll go down here, mesh integrity, fix mesh. Thank you. Let's do another ZRemesh. So now, yeah, so now we got it down to 15,000, so that's good. So now I could just go in here and use the smooth brush and the move brush and kind of, that geometry kind of stinks, but that's okay. Make these look a little sharper. Okay. Oops. That. There we go, almost there. You can see how having those lower levels of subdivision just makes it easier, faster to work with. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Spiky, but you know, kind of controlled at the same point. Of course, doing a retopology on this would not be fun because of how weird it is, but you might be able to get away with doing some ZRemesh. There's just a few parts like on the tips here where it gets really thin that kind of need to be fixed because you get some weird geometry there. But we're worried about sculpting right now, so. Okay. Oops. Now we have this. Now he's looking kind of cute. Little spikies. Of course I have, let's see. I have this version without the spikies. This version with the spikies. So let's save this. And what I'm going to do is go in here and let's see. We have 5 levels of subdivision. And this one has geometry 3. So I'm going to subdivide this 2 more times to get 5 levels of subdivision. Maybe not, because that's 3 million. That's a bit much. So I think what I'll do instead is I'm going to control click on here to store this history part. Go down to 3 levels of subdivision and let's say delete higher. I'm going to control shift click on this, control shift click on it again. You could do delete hidden. I like to do split hidden. I have to go to the lowest subdivision level to do this. The reason is because you can still keep your levels of subdivision when you do split hidden. It's just taking whatever is hidden and putting it as another subtool. So now I have this subtool and I have this subtool. Don't care about this one, so I'm going to delete it. Goodbye, so long. And I have this one and I have this one. So this has, let's see, 4 levels of subdivision. And this has, we'll do 3, divide it 1 more time. So theoretically, I should be able to merge down this one with this one. As long as they have the same number of subdivision levels, it should keep that subdivision level history. Let's see if it works. Always save whenever you're merging subtools because it's not something you can't undo it after you merged it, apparently. Okay, so let's see if I do this. We'll do turn off UV and do merge down. And it says no. Why you don't want to merge down? Why don't you want to merge down? Try 1 more time. Merge down. Didn't want to do it. Alrighty. Let's do subtool all low. There we go. Now merge down. We didn't like those subdivision levels, but I lost my levels of subdivision. Oh well, that's okay. I'm going to divide it a few more times and then mask this. And then since I stored my history point, let's see, will it allow me to do this? Project history. There we go. So I just projected the history back onto the model, and now I have all my details. So lesson there, it takes a while to learn it, but there's usually a way out of any situation if you're trying to do something complex. How many days does it take to finish a sculpt from rendered, scratch to render? Yeah, that's like, it's a question my clients always ask me. I don't know. It's really hard because it depends on the sculpt. Also, since I'm doing so many projects at once, usually it's hard for me to keep track of any individual one. But, you know, usually I would say, you know, for a typical bug, if I'm really hard pressed, I could do it in maybe like, I don't know, depends on the bug. Like, you know, 4 days or something like that. I don't know. It depends on the model. It's hard to say. Like I can model something like a chair or a stool in a few hours. But, you know, bug, you know, I don't know. It's hard to say. Which iPad do I have? Let's see. I have this iPad right here. This is a fairly new one. I forget exactly what flavor it is. It's the iPad X or iPad Pro X or something like that. I don't know. Nope, there's my microphone. It's ZBrush. It's this one right here. I have the pen. It's one of the fancier ones. Bigger ones, I guess. I forget exactly which model it is. It's the like Power Pro or whatever. That's a terrible answer to your question about the iPad. I think the iPad 11-inch Pro for 2021. Yeah, 13-inch. Bigger is better for ZBrush, obviously. I like it. That one's really, really nice. I bought it in September, I want to say, either August or September. And the new one, it's really nice. So there are our back legs right there at the moment. So I'm going to save this. I'll do a save next. And let's take a look at our model. So right now it's 10:40. So I've got about 20 minutes left. So what I think I might do is take a break from legs and just talk about where the abdomen is at the moment. And let's take a look at our reference here. You know, you get faster at these things, obviously, because you learn the more tricks, you know. It's just like learning a language or something like that. This is something I was pointing out last time. There's an interesting thing about this abdomen is you have the harder parts of the exoskeleton right here, the harder chitin, but you see how it fades into sort of a softer, more flexible part of the model. So that's really interesting. So a lot of times for abdomens, what I'll do is I'll just basically extract individual pieces and make each one of those pieces its own piece of geometry. But I don't know if I'm going to do that here because we have this blend into this kind of lower blob on the bottom of the abdomen, which I really like. I don't know if it's true for all of the... It's hard to tell on that one right there. Yeah, you can see it's true on this one. It's such a cool feature that I want to keep that. And take a look at how I did it on my other it's a B. This guy, yeah. So this is the one that I made earlier. Let me turn off the texture. So this is the more realistic version. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just a single sculpt. If I look at the B, this abdomen, you can see this, well, it's hard to tell from the scan, but it is overlapping pieces. You can see that these are overlapping pieces of geometry, and each one of these I would probably make its own piece since they're not blended in there. So you can find a more recent version of that. Yeah, that's right. So let's go back to our cute little katydid. And again, I'm going to store history. So I'm going to control click right here on the history to store that. And then this is Dynamesh at the moment. So let's make one single polygroup. And I'm going to do a ZRemesh. So let's set this to half and adaptive, and then do a ZRemesh. Got an error, so go down here to mesh integrity, fix mesh, and then ZRemesh. Let's do that a few times. The nice thing about doing the ZRemesh is it gets rid of a lot of that kind of messiness in my Dynamesh sculpt. I mean, I like some of the messiness because it makes it organic, but again, it kind of smooths everything out. So I'm getting it down to like 21,000. Let's see if I can get anything. Make it even lower, 11,000. So now what I'll do is I'll Control D, subdivide it up again, and like up to 700,000. I'm going to just do a mask here